A new book goes behind the scenes of the Trump presidency. It's called, Frankly, We Did Win This Election, the inside story of how Trump lost. Includes interviews with staffers and friends of the former president, and even one-on-one interviews with former President Trump himself. Michael C. Bender is a senior White House reporter for the Wall Street Journal. He wrote the book, and he is now here to talk about it with us. Michael, it's great to see you again.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. So, Michael, one of the questions Anne-Marie and I had is, I've been seeing a lot of chatter, as I'm sure you have, over the last couple of days of people wondering why White House correspondents like yourself, or people who cover the White House, perhaps may have had some of the bombshell revelations that are in your book, but that didn't come out during the Trump presidency itself. And I guess maybe you could explain to folks, I think a lot of these books, you're doing them after the fact. You're sort of looking back at a presidency as opposed to reporting on it in the moment. My guess is if you had something that was relevant to the administration at the time, you would divulge it in the course of your reporting. But just for people who are wondering about that, before we dig into the details of your book, maybe break that down for us.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate the question because you're right, it has come up quite a bit. And I think what it really is frustration with one book in particular last year that was written by not a daily journalist. I work for a newspaper. We put out news every day. Everything I learn goes into that story that day. There's no bombshells in this book that I had held on to during the campaign. The Wall Street Journal would have a thing or two to say about that as well. So this is, this book is written and reported in the last six months. It is informed by my coverage of Trump since 2016, all 4 years in the White House and 2 presidential campaigns. I bring that context to the book to explain the different details and some of the scenes I lay out and some of the different new information we have. But none of the actual news here is things that I had, certainly before the election and waited to print until now.
The president has certainly at times had some nice things to say about you. He thinks you have beautiful hair, so beautiful, in fact, that it would qualify you to be press secretary, or at least that would have been a factor. Now, since the book has come out, there's some not so nice things. So I'm going to read one of his criticisms of the book and you. He says, the story written by third-rate reporter Michael Bender that Mike Pence and I had a big fight over Corey Lewandowski is totally false. I'm curious why, there's a lot of what you wrote in the book that isn't particularly flattering to the president. Why do you think that particular instance got under his skin?
Yeah, well, Anne-Marie, I wish you would have pulled some of the quotes about my hair instead of that one from him. But you're right. I mean, and had he attacked my hair, then I think then I really would have known he was upset, because that has been really the crux of our relationship for a long time. But I went down to Mar-a-Lago twice. I spent a lot of time with the president after the election. He was very, very generous with his time, invited me to stay for dinner after one of them. And my point here being is that he's singling out my book. He's attacking me because he knows exactly how many people I've spoken to for this project, people close to him, people who usually don't speak with reporters. And he knows that, and that's why he's attacking now.
So, Michael,
and you've also spoken to him a number of times too.
Yeah, that's right. As a candidate, and then in the White House, I've interviewed him in his office in Trump Tower, in the Oval Office, on Air Force One, and yes, he brought me down to Mar-a-Lago at 2 separate times for the book interview. We've known each other for quite a while. I interviewed him during the pandemic. It was my interview where he claimed that he had made Juneteenth famous. A lot of people remember that moment. So I've known him and had interactions with him for a long time, and I think this is just his way to respond to this, and he's not attacking the actual substance here or giving his version of events. Just calling things false is because he knows that that this book is informed by a lot of people who are very close to him.
So, Michael, your book details former President Trump's reaction to seeing the George Floyd video for the first time. It's a fascinating section of the book, and you write this: Trump contorted his face as he watched. He looked repulsed, then turned away and handed the phone back to his aides without finishing. "This is effing terrible," he blurted out. So what did you learn about the behind-the-scenes response to the murder of George Floyd, the calls for racial justice that followed, and I guess more importantly, how did he go from having a reaction that almost everyone, whether you are in government, whether you're a reporter, whether you're a former police officer, I have friends of mine who are former cops who saw that video and reacted in exactly the same way, with disgust on their face.
Yeah.
How did he go from that to offering condolences to the Floyd family to tweeting when the looting starts, the shooting starts?
Yeah, I think what you keep in mind too that it took him a day or two before he even watched the video, and he's never seen the whole thing. He had such a visceral reaction to watching it, like so many of us did, that he turned it off halfway through. But what happened there, Vlad, is that he internalized the protest as a protest against him. He took it personally. A lot of that same problem was in his response to COVID. The protests to the George Floyd killing had nothing to do with President Trump, and that was years and decades, of injustice that had finally cracked open and poured out into the streets across America. And it was incumbent on whoever the president was to respond to that with, some measure of empathy and understanding. But Trump took that personally, and we see this come out when he lashes out at his military generals, his top aides, his National Security Council, that he wanted to shoot Americans. He wanted them to shoot peaceful protesters. The people around him, and which is why a lot of them talked to me, they were worried not about the chaos at this point. They were worried that he'd become dangerous and violent and unhinged. And we see that play throughout to January 6th as well. Similar type of response. Sorry.
This is all good stuff. Another really interesting part of the book has to do with when the president tested positive for COVID-19 a month before the election. And you wrote that the severity of Trump's condition was still being concealed. There was a statement from Kayleigh McEnany announcing the departure, and it repeated the fib that Donald Trump only had mild symptoms when he was definitely infected. What did we learn about what was going on behind the scenes at that time, and what impact it may have had on Trump's reelection campaign?
Yeah, this is, again, another moment where it's not, no one initially blamed Trump for the pandemic. The problem here is in the response. And what's happening here behind the scenes at the time, and this book lays out, and the details you mentioned and others, is that his top advisors, many of his top advisors were concerned that he'd become not just reckless with public health, but reckless with his own health and those around him. It's sort of consistent from his behavior behind the scenes and to his messaging. There's a story in there that when he finally puts on his mask, and he a few days later, his top pollsters in the Oval Office, the pollster had been giving him numbers for months saying that, American public supported wearing masks. And he asked his pollsters, "Did you see me? I had the mask on, and I'm going to go out there to a news conference right now, and I promise I won't call it the Wuhan virus." And the pollster thanks him and says that's a good idea. And he turns and says, "I'll just call it the China virus." And the pollster says that's not a good idea either, right? And it's not. He needs to be seen as taking. He was never seen as taking the virus seriously, and that was when, at the end of the day, what really hurt him on COVID.
Let me ask you, Michael, before we let you go, because it's something that you mentioned. You mentioned the January 6th insurrection, and now we're talking about COVID. We're talking about the reaction to the George Floyd video and the subsequent aftermath, the reaction from President Trump. And something that I see in your book, and a refrain that I've heard, and I wonder if this is the refrain that you've heard from all the sources that you spoke to for this book, is the fact that, as you see it, as you explain, the president sees everything through the prism of his own experiences. In other words, everything, whether it's something that's happening in a park or in New York City or in Minneapolis or in California, everything that happened throughout the course of his presidency, good and bad, was seen in his mind as a reflection of the individual. and very little of it had to do with how people across the country are feeling about racial injustice and police brutality, or how people who lost family members to the COVID infection and to COVID-19 felt in the wake of listening to the former president say it's not a big deal and then finding a loved one in the hospital and possibly passing away. Everything has to do with just how it reflects upon him. Is that what some of the folks you spoke to said in their own sort of dime store psychological assessment of the former president?
Yeah, exactly. Not just the things they said. These are details they told me about in meetings. I mean, the George Floyd protest. When it comes to the George Floyd protest, he lashed out to his team that he had done so much for the Black community, and now none of that was paying off. He expected. I don't know quite what he expected, that the protest not to happen because he had passed some criminal justice reform laws. When it came to COVID, I have direct quotes from inside the Oval Office of him directly linking COVID to his own reelection immediately, saying this is going to hurt the economy and that's going to hurt me.
And so, Michael, just to put a fine point on it, isn't that why then his aides had to do battle with him when January 6th happened? Because he saw it as a reflection. He saw people out there fighting for him.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And Bill Barr stomps out of the White House over Trump's incessant claims about election fraud. Takes Pat Cipollone, the top White House attorney, to run out to the parking lot to slap his hand on Barr's black sedan to get him from leaving the White House and quitting. And Bill Barr agreed, but quickly regretted that decision.
Michael C. Bender, books about Trump have become a bit of a cottage industry. There's a lot out there to choose from. Yours is really good. Another thing that I like about your book is you also sort of dip into his supporters, not as peripheral characters or background. You really sort of get close to supporters to find out, why they go to rally after rally and continue to support him even after the attack on the Capitol. I think it's an excellent book. Wish we could talk to you longer. Michael C. Bender, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Frankly, we did win this election. The inside story of how Trump lost is available now.